Hi, and welcome to my public journal. Today, I didn't do a lot of coding, but at least about 30 minutes to 45 minutes of coding. So I get to still report on what I did. And this evening, I spent a lot of time trying to prepare my meals for the week. So I didn't have much time to code. But to give you some updates, what I did on the project is that I switched to the CLI tool. So in yesterday's video, I mentioned that my next step would be trying to integrate the CLI tool with the updates on the API, because now I've integrated authentication into the API. So today I was looking at how can I integrate the authentication bit into the CLI, and I've been doing a lot of brainstorming and asking ChatGPT, also trying to understand the process in which this will be like the best way to approach it. And I haven't really settled on an idea, but currently what I'm thinking about is something similar to what we do with GitHub, where you can get a personal access token and you use it to clone a repository, and for as long as the personal access token is valid, you are able to communicate directly with GitHub without having to authenticate yourself every time that you are going to use it. Because currently with the implementation of the authentication, the token that is generated, I give it expiry of 3 days. This means that if any user uses it in 3 days time, it has expired. And I can imagine if you are working on a command line and after every 3 days you have to log into the service again. I know that that is protective, like that is really good, but then the developer experience, I believe, isn't the best. If there's a way for a developer to sign in to the service and be able to stay signed in for as long as they want, that would be better. I still haven't figured out the best way that I'm going to do this, but I'm still thinking through it. So that was one of the things I did in terms of brainstorming how or the approach I should take for this particular problem. Then the second thing I did was to now try, because I've made changes to the API, I needed to try out the new code base with the CLI. So initially I integrated the CLI with the API, but as I mentioned, I've made some changes to the API, the CodeSnipX API itself. I've made some changes to it. So I need to test it out to see. And when I tested it out, it was working. So I thought that, oh, everything was working great. But later I realized that even though I'm calling, and I'll show you a demonstration soon, but even though I'm calling like a particular ID, so I'm trying to get a specific code snippet, but I'm getting an output, except that that output is not the specific one I'm looking for. So it's like it's giving me the first snippet in the database, and that's not what I'm calling. Like I'm using the ID. So I had to start debugging by putting in a lot of console logs to understand where the problem is. And I realized the problem had nothing to do with my CLI tool. It was a problem with the API itself, so the backend side of things. And when I went to the backend, that was when I realized that, oh, because I changed from using the ID to search to now using the hash ID, that was where the problem was coming from. And it dawned on me that, yeah, I added the hash ID as an additional layer that people can use to access the snippet. And in yesterday's video, or I think 2 days ago video, I mentioned that a colleague of mine also suggested that I implement Slacks, and I ended up using Slacks as well. So now to find any snippet in the database of using the backend, you can do that by searching with the MongoDB ID itself, or using the hash ID that we generate for every snippet, or using the Slack, which is also generated based on the title. So if you remember the title of your snippet, then you should be able to access it using its Slack. So now I should allow not just the ID, but either of these should be able to we should be able to use either of these to access the snippet. So I had to go refactor the back end because I saw that was where the problem was coming from. Eventually, I was able to sort it out. Initially, the strategy that I used, which I realized wasn't effective, was to run the query against each of them. So it will start and run the query searching for the code snippets with that specific ID. And if this ID does not exist, let's run for the hash ID that will be equivalent to this specific ID that is being passed or the subsequent one. And I realized that wasn't an effective approach. So eventually I did say that go into the database and search for this value that I'm providing you, either search at either the ID or the hash ID or the slug, and whichever one matches, that is what I want you to return. So that's how I've implemented it now, and now it works very fine. I've tested it with the CLI tool, and that also works great. And let me show you a demonstration of how the CLI tool is supposed to work. Let me give you a quick demo of how the CLI tool works. So this tool, this is the code base as you can see it, and eventually I want to make this into an npm package. In fact, that's how I've created it right now, but I'm yet to publish that package. What this is supposed to do is, if you are using your terminal, you should be able to retrieve or create any code snippet and save it to our backend. So the API that I was working on, which I published on Render yesterday, that is the supporting backend for it. And currently the database is hosted on MongoDB Atlas. So let me quickly show you that. This is MongoDB Atlas, and as you can see, here is a sample, and these are just for testing sake. So I have some basic code snippets in there, and I'm going to use the CLI tool to grab the code itself. So you can see that the code part is this part. This part where we have the async function, generate unique slug. So I want to have this in a particular file. Let's say I've already previously stored this code in the database or on the platform I created this snippet. So if I'm working in my VS Code or any terminal at all and I want it in a specific file, then I can use the CLI tool to do that. So over here, a simple command of running snippets get then the hash ID. So today what I worked on was trying to refine it so that you can call the code snippet using either the hash ID or the ID itself or even the slug. So either of them is going to work, but in this case I've picked the hash ID, and I'm also going to indicate a file in which I want this to be in. So currently I do not have any file here called test3. I only have test, but I've called this test3. So if the file does not exist, then it's going to create a new file for us. If the file already exists, then it's going to insert it into the existing file. So if I go ahead and click enter, you would see that it says snippet was added to this file. And you can also see down here, we've added a new file called test3.js. If you open it, you realize this is the code base that has been inserted into the file. And that's exactly what we had on MongoDB. So if you can see, the async function generates unique slug. That is the same code base that was put into the file. So that is exactly how it works. And this is just one of the ways in which you are retrieving code from our API or our backend. And hopefully this is going to be one of the avenues, but I'm looking forward to implementing a VS Code extension that you can use directly if you are using VS Code, or publishing this as an npm package so that all you need is install a package and you're able to have access to all your code base that you have stored on our platform. and it sounds very exciting for me. I hope others also find it useful. But I see the use case in here is if I have particular code base, say I've written an algorithm that does a particular thing and I want to be able to reuse them, I can quickly store it on CodeSnipX, and anytime I want to use it, I'll come and call it with a simple command and it will insert it directly in the location that I want. All right. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you are and you want to also motivate me, please go ahead and drop your comments in the comment section. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're yet to. You can equally share it with your friends as well to motivate other people who want to be building. So my goal is not just to get better by building stuff, but also to motivate and inspire every other person out there who wants to also be building, that this is possible and consistency is something that will take us far. So you can emulate these steps that I'm taking to also go far on this journey. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.